we'll go ahead and get started. I apologize for the delay. Caucus meeting ran a little long today, but thank each and every one of you for being here. Chairlady Penny Houston is tuned in online, and I'm sure we'll be receiving messages from her during the meeting, but she's at home recuperating from a little bit of sickness, but she's doing well. We'll keep her in our prayers. With that, Chairman Bottom, would you open up with a word of prayer, please?
Sure. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for today. Thank you for the opportunity to gather together to consider these issues. Lord, we just pray you would guide us with your wisdom and grant us favor as we work through these issues. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will y'all close that door in the back, please, sir? Thank you. All right, first up, Commissioner Tyler Harper. Welcome to the podium, sir. Well, hold on. I just did something I shouldn't have here. All right, go ahead.
You got me now? There we go. Good morning.
Now.
Good to be here. Or afternoon. It's not morning. My day, it just feels like it all runs together sometimes. Anyway, it's good to be with y'all and just to chat about FY24 amended. Just to kind of go through a few things really quick. Our department, we've been really busy over the last year and the work that we've been doing, and I really appreciate our team and about 500 employees that go to work every single day to execute that mission, and looking forward to things to come. As far as budget-wise, we're as a department, we have a number of divisions, about 20 different divisions. I'll talk about that a little bit in just a second. But funding-wise, we get about 81% of our funds from the state. About 19% of our money comes from the federal government, and so we rely. Even though we get federal funds, when we talk about pay raises and those kind of things, we'll have this conversation in the big budget. But I think it's important to keep that in mind and what we deal with. Also, the work we've been doing in other areas, in addition to all the other things that we deal with mental health. I mentioned that in the Joint Appropriations Committee, and I'm really proud of our partnership with DBHDD and the University of Georgia, and we look forward to continuing that. Just to kind of give you an overview of the department. These are not all the divisions in the department. These are just the divisions in our Consumer Protection Division. And under that, you'll see a quick summary of what each of those divisions do. I just wanted to kind of throw this up there on screen just so you could see it. We do a lot at the Department of Agriculture. We are a very vast agency. We have a lot of responsibility, and we're really proud of the work that we do as an agency and as a team, and definitely appreciate the work with the legislature to help us address those issues every single day. As far as some of the things we've dealt with over the last year, as we've talked about, the yellow-legged hornet, the hurricanes, the HPAI outbreak that we had, those issues are things that as an agency where we consume costs for. I think I've mentioned to the committee before that the yellow-legged hornet, for an example, so far has cost us about $155,000 as an agency, and those are funds that we don't prepare for. Those are costs that we incur, and that we really are working toward building that up. We started that last year with the conversation around SART and the money that this committee helped us put in the budget for SART funding. And I think that type of funding will help us go a long way in ensuring that we have the resources we need to respond to these operational responses that we have as an agency. In addition to these, I mentioned in the joint budget hearing that we had a number of vehicle wrecks that we responded to because they involved agricultural commodities or livestock. So there's a lot that the department does that most people have no clue that we do. And I think it's important for people to understand the role that the agency plays every single day in the lives of every Georgian. It's an agency that impacts every Georgian every single day. And I appreciate our team and our team's effort to address the issues as they arise and address the issues ongoing for our farm families, our ranchers, and our consumers all across the state. Digging into the numbers, which is what we're here about. Probably should have discussed this a little later, but we'll go ahead and hit on the farmers markets really quick, and I'll get into a little more of that in just a second when I talk about the bonds and where we are. But just wanted to put the revenues and expenses related to the farmers markets on the screen to kind of give you an idea of what our farmers markets bring into the state. As you can see, the revenue from our markets is a little over about $7.5 million. And the expenses we have are a little over 3.2, so there's a net profit to the state of a little over $4.2 million from the markets. We get about $3 million a year to that we utilize to operate our markets, in addition to the agricultural trust fund that we have been using to help us address needs at the farmers markets across the state. And we've been utilizing those dollars to help ensure that we keep our farmers markets in tip-top shape. You should have received a trust fund report from us at the end of the year, this past fiscal year, describing and outlaying what we've been doing with those trust fund dollars that we receive and how we've been spending those. I hope you saw that report. If not, please let us know. We'd be happy to make sure you got it in your hand, but all of you should have received that report. And I think our team's done a really good job, and we've been very strategic over the last year in how we appropriate and spend those dollars on the projects that we've been addressing at the farmers markets and the networks across the state. And we'll have a little more conversation about this in just a second. Diving off into the...
If I could,
yes, sir.
could you go back to the previous slide there? Could you talk through Cordell, Macon, and Savannah in terms of the losses there and what activity is going on at those markets currently?
So, obviously, when you have it in the red, that means that we're spending more than we're operating, right? Then we're bringing in, then we have revenue. That's right. I think that's kind of obvious, right? When you look at those markets and what we have ongoing at those markets, those are some of the areas we probably need to focus on, and as an agency, and ensuring that we have tenants on the market to provide to sell their product. That's what those markets are there for. Specifically, the Savannah market. That's something we've been internally working on and trying to find some additional partnerships in that particular part of the state, and how we utilize that space and how we utilize that market. The Savannah market also is one of those where we had a particular shelter in our report. You should have saw in the trust fund report, we've been doing a facilities analysis on the farmers markets over the last year, trying to get a strategic understanding of where we are. Part of that analysis, one of the sheds at the Savannah market was deemed to be unfit, and was by the engineering firm was basically red tagged. We had to put it completely out of service. We sat down and got cost on what it would cost us to fix the shed back up versus demolition. We decided as an agency to demo the shed because of the cost benefit ratio. It was a much more beneficial to demo the shed than it was to fix it and look at possibly rebuilding in the future. So we do have some shed space at the Savannah market that was available that is no longer available. So that's one of those issues. The Macon market is one of those that is utilized in a couple of different capacities. Obviously, we have some office space there as an agency that we use as a landing zone. And that's kind of our central Georgia office space, so to speak. So one of our operating subdivisions operates out of the Macon market. Warehousing and bonding actually operates out of there. We have a partnership with GEMA as well on the market there. But there's always, in regards to any of the markets, but specifically Cordell, Macon, and Savannah, we're trying to get strategic in how we operate, but also how we can better utilize those spaces to ensure that we're covering our costs. And that's an ongoing conversation we're having internally. We just kind of finalized our facilities report. Paul on our team, Paul Bryant, who's been doing that, we're finalizing that now. We're going to start diving into that data and the utilization of our markets, and that's going to help us be strategic in how we utilize these markets going forward, and try to attract business to those markets as well. All right. In the governor's budget, you will see that we have, in the governor's recommendation, a little over $3.3 million was included for equipment and vehicles to implement the electric vehicle charging program, which we as an agency are required to implement beginning in January of this next year of 2025. And so that's one of those things that I really think we've got to have a conversation about. We're very grateful to the governor and his team for including that funding in the budget. But as I said in the joint committee hearing, when we look at the equipment needed for this, just the testing equipment alone has tripled in cost since we started this conversation last year, and there's really only one company that we're aware of that even makes the testing equipment that we would be required to purchase to exercise this. We've been having conversations with the Public Service Commission, with some of our university network and others to try to find some ways to help us be more effective and efficient in what the costs are. But at the end of the day, as with any emerging market, as this is, we're on the front edge of this as a state, and our team is putting in the work needed to get us prepared to be ready to go to work on January of 2025. But I just want the committee to be aware that this is one of those things that we're really pigeonholed with certain vendors because they're the only ones that provide certain equipment that we would need as an agency to implement the program.
Quick question, Chairman Bonner.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Has there been any analysis to see how the scope of that would expand or would need to expand either budgetary wise or just, from a practical stance, what that could scale up to?
So currently, based on the numbers and where we are as an agency, we have estimated that it will take us, based on the current market, based on what the law would require us to do, around 15 or so inspectors a year to accomplish the job we're being asked to do. And so obviously 15 people means 15 vehicles, that means 15 testers, that means 15 of everything, computers, you name it, that we would need to purchase, in addition to salaries for around 15 people every year to address the program. As more chargers come online, obviously we would have to come back and request additional funding for additional positions and equipment to address those needs, depending on where we are every year. And that would be a conversation that we would bring back to the legislature each year, depending on where we are statewide and how many more chargers have come online. So it would be an ongoing conversation, but we believe right now around 15 will get us where we need to be to do the job we've been asked to do in January of 2025.
Commissioner, would that be 15 new inspectors, or would
Yes.
that be inspectors from somewhere else in the department that we're moving around?
It would be 15
scale
new
up?
inspectors.
And
To that point, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
as I've discussed before, we have about 80 funded vacancies in the department. I would tell you that every one of those positions, and I've been working this internally, where they are vacant is where we need that person. So although we do have some vacancies that we could utilize, those positions, we really need those positions in the division that they're in currently, right now, today. And with the additional funding that we hope the legislature will agree to in FY25, we hope to be able to address those issues, because that's going to give us the pay raises needed to help with recruitment and retention going forward.
And the testing equipment you're referring to is to ensure that consumers are indeed getting what they believe they're
That's
paying
correct.
for
So
in
the
terms of charging.
testing equipment, it will do that. That's correct. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Commissioner. Mr. Gullett.
Thank you. I have one quick question related to that. So the chargers that you're inspecting today is really like the low count. There's only going to grow because it's only the chargers that are being allowed to be sold by kilowatt hour, right? It's not the chargers that are in the Kroger parking lot by time. And so 15 seems like a lot for how many chargers we have today. I mean, maybe that's the startup, for when this thing begins, and maybe it's, I don't know. It just seems like a lot of number for me, to be honest with you, just for how many chargers we have today.
So, yes and no.
Okay.
The way the legislation reads currently, we are actually required to address certain level 2 and all level 3 chargers. Would that be an accurate? I'm looking to make sure I'm saying that correctly. So even though, to your point, it might not be set up to do it by kilowatt hour, we're still required to address that charger to ensure that the consumer is protected from the power that they're receiving through that charger.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense? So the legislation actually does a little more than what you're referring to.
Sure. Well, one last question. I know you guys do this for the fuel stations as well. You might not know the answer. If you don't, I'll get it from you later. But how many inspectors do you have for that?
I would have to get you that answer.
that's
I don't
fine.
know
No
that
worries.
right off the top of my head. We can get that back to you, how many fuel inspectors we have. Yes, sir. And there's a lot of nozzles in this state. So, yes, sir. Because we inspect every single, and so to that point, just because there's one nozzle on a pump, if there's 5 selections on that pump, we actually have to do 5 tests on that one nozzle. So it takes a lot of time, a lot more time than I think a lot of people realize. So, any other questions on EVs? I'll hop forward, Mr. Chairman. All right. The other thing that was included in the AFY 24 was the one-time salary supplement for recruitment and retention for the $1,000. As I mentioned, and Chancellor Perdue, I think, so aptly mentioned, that money's been spent, so we hope you'll continue to fund that. We would appreciate that. That money's out the door. But we really do appreciate that additional supplement. I think it goes a long ways in helping our people and helping our staff. In the bond package for the amended 24 budget, there's $50 million for the Atlanta farmers market. As I mentioned earlier, have a little more conversation here. I think this is going to go a long ways in helping us address the needs at the Atlanta State Farmers Market. The Atlanta Farmers Market is arguably the produce hub of the southeastern U.S. A lot of product moves through there, and it is in need of a lot of upgrades. And a lot of maintenance issues that have been put off for decades. And so we're very grateful to the governor's office in addressing this, and we look forward to being very strategic in how those funds are spent and expended, and bringing our farmers market up to speed. Now, granted, it's not going to fix everything. The estimate to completely renovate the entire farmers market, if we were to go from the ground up, is about $1.5 billion, to put it in perspective. So $50 million, though, will still go a long ways in addressing a lot of long-term needs that we have at the Atlanta State Farmers Market. The other bond in the package that we have is 1.7, a little over 1.7 million to replace vehicles. As I mentioned in the, which we're very appreciative of and will go a long ways in helping our team, and we appreciate that. Kind of talking about the vehicle situation just a little bit to bring it in perspective. At the department, we currently have 58 vehicles that meet or exceed the replacement criteria laid out by DOAS. Of those vehicles, 31 of them have over 200,000 miles on them. And then we also, in addition to that, have a number of inspectors that do not have a state vehicle. And I want to ensure that all of our inspectors that are exercising regulatory authority for multiple reasons, for safety, for our employees, but also for the consumer to know when they pull up in the driveway that individual works for the state, works for the department. I think it's important for a visual so they understand that it's more official. We're going to work to put our inspectors that don't currently have a vehicle that have regulatory authority in a state vehicle, in addition to working to replace the vehicles we need. So the 1.7 will give us enough money to address about 42 of those, but we really have another 20 or so vehicles plus that we could address this year alone to help us get the funding we need. So we would request additional funding for vehicle needs we have as an agency. And this is something we want to have a conversation about on an annualized yearly basis. I don't believe the department has necessarily asked for funds year to year for vehicles specifically, but as big as our fleet is, I think it's something we need to have as an annualized appropriation to help us as an agency to help us ensure that our vehicle fleet is up to par every single year. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation for the amended FY24 budget, and I'd be happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Tarvin.
Is this thing on? On the inspectors who don't have vehicles, how many of those do you say there are?
So currently, we have about 10 or so that would, under the old criteria, there used to be a criteria that you had to meet a certain mileage reimbursement from the state before you were deemed to be able to get a vehicle. There's about 10 that meet that criteria. That criteria actually technically no longer exists. We actually have more than 10
My
that are
question
in a
is,
vehicle.
is it readily available to find out what you guys pay in mileage a year versus what we're talking about?
It's the state rate, but we could figure that out.
I'm talking about total.
Oh yeah. Yes, sir.
I'd like to know that.
We could figure that out.
That's on people that are driving their own vehicles.
Yes, sir.
That would qualify for
That's correct.
a department car or vehicle.
All righty. Any other members have any questions for Commissioner Harper? All right, Commissioner.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you will, I got an answer for
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Representative Gutlett on the my staff's put this together really quick. So we have 21 positions. Those 21 positions include 3 part-time positions for retail fuel inspections. That'll give you an idea about how many we utilize in that particular space. 18 full-time, 3 part-time. Yes, sir. Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you to the committee, to the chair lady, Representative Houston. I hate she was not here, but if you're listening, we hope you get well soon. But thank y'all, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
All right, Georgia Forestry Commission, Mr. Tim Larimore. You want me to hold that up for you? I can hold it right here if you'd like. Does everyone have a copy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd just like to commend Commissioner Harper. I guess before he gets out of here, I don't, while I got an opportunity, he is, I tell you, his first year he's hit the ground running, and I just want to commend him for all the places that I've seen him. He's been in a lot of forestry meetings that I find myself at. So, Commissioner Harper, appreciate what you're doing for our state, and thank you for making sure forestry is part of your conversation and part of your topic. So you're doing a tremendous job, and look forward to seeing you shape the department in the coming years. So well done, and look forward to working with you going forward. Mr. Chairman, glad to be here. It certainly is an honor to represent the Georgia Forestry Commission. As Commissioner Harper said, he's got 500 employees that wake up every day to go to work for Georgia, and we've got about 600 hardworking Georgians that wake up every day to go ensure that our forests are managed and private landowners that own timberland and forest land in this state to ensure that their assets, their timber, their forest resources are protected. And I couldn't be more proud to lead this agency and to lead that great workforce working every day around our state. I was reminded of their work yesterday. I was down in Waycross, close to your district, Mr. Chairman, and I was observing about 30 of our folks that were doing some burning with a partnership with DOT on the entrance to the Okefenokee Swamp. And they were doing it for 2 reasons. They were doing it for wildfire control, and they were also doing it for rare and endangered species regeneration. Pitcher plants. That is one of the most prime habitats for pitcher plants in the country. And our folks were down there. We had 30 of those folks down there yesterday doing good work. And I was super proud to see them do that. So Certainly, certainly grateful for that. I will also, before I get into the budget, I just want to take the opportunity to again share with this group. I shared it in the joint committee, and it's really important to our people because I saw how it impacted them when we were going through this back in the spring. We were reminded this year that the work that we do as an agency is dangerous. Not only wildfires, fighting and putting prescribed burning on the ground. Obviously, we know that's dangerous, but the associated work that we do, like mopping up fires and measuring fires, puts our employees in some really unique and some strenuous positions. And unfortunately, we had an individual, Luke Daniels from Sandersville, pass away this year, and it was a reminder to our entire agency that we've got to be focused on safety and health and doing all we can do to protect our employees. So I appreciate all the people that reached out to me directly, and it was heartfelt, and it was certainly appreciated for the folks that reached out to me. Many of you in here and your colleagues reached out and expressed their condolences, and I'm certainly grateful for that. And it was great to know that we had the support of this body and of the governor's office during that tough time for our agency. I do want to turn toward the budget. I will just walk through the tracking sheet. You'll notice that there's $592,000 associated with that money already spent that Commissioner Harper talked about. That was for the $1,000 supplement that was given to our employees, and we certainly would ask for this, for you guys to support that as you go forward. Under protection, you'll notice that there's an $8.6 million ask for radio equipment. That brings me to my prop here. I'm going to try to put up here. I know it's going to be difficult for the folks in the back of the room to see, but you also have a copy of this map in front of you, committee members. Commissioner Nunn, can you see that? You got it. All right, good. Yeah. All right. That $8.6 million does a couple things. It aligns our current communication system it puts us in line with other agencies in the state that are responding to natural disasters and first response situations that our state face. Many people don't realize this, but the Forestry Commission, our employees are oftentimes some of the first ones on the ground in communities where there's a natural disaster. And this communication system that will move us from VHF to VHF and LTE combination will align us with the other state agencies that are already there with this new public safety radio network. We're excited about that. We think that's great. It aligns us with them and allows us to have a seamless communication with them. We also are excited because it will move and modernize our current radio system, which is dependent on towers. And that's what the map in front of you is depicting. Particularly the box, I just want to point out that is pulled out of the map. You'll notice there's about 12 squares on there with X's on them. Those towers have been condemned as a result of Hurricane Michael, the winds that were associated with Hurricane Michael that came through. They're still operable, but they have been condemned. And if we have a challenge or an issue with the radio system that we have currently, which is VHF, we would have to repair those towers before we could repair the radio network. And those towers, to repair each one of them, is about $280,000 a piece. So the exciting thing about this project that we're moving into, this new radio project that will improve our communications with other agencies, it will also reduce this future liability of having to replace these towers should we have to replace or do maintenance on our radio system, the current radio system. So just wanted to point that out to you, Mr. Chairman, and I see you may have a question.
Quick question. I mean, when looking at the map, particularly in the box here, you've got a section kind of in middle Georgia, Pulaski, Wilcox, Ben Hill area, where seemingly you may not have radio service. Is that correct, currently under the current radio system?
No, we do have coverage all over the state with our current system through our repeater network. Yes, sir. These are direct lines from our repeaters, where the central hub circles that you see there,
right,
like in Telfair. they go to another tower, and those towers come back to those repeaters, and it does cover statewide currently now. Yes, sir.
What is the implementation time frame? Should we be able to do something here of implementing?
We would be ready to roll. We are already having conversations with the vendor and getting ready for that to take place before the end of the year. Before fiscal year.
And the 8.6 million is for radio equipment, for the actual equipment?
For equipment,
in trucks and
associated technology to come with it. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gullett.
Yeah, thank you. So when you said $280,000, is that for the control station tower as a whole, or is it for the repeater stations, or is it for the combination?
That's the tower that's coming up. That's the individual tower.
So
So
each of the X's on the box is $280,000, or just the red X's, the control?
No, the square X's, the ones that are square X's, our IT department is saying that if we had to replace those towers,
Yeah.
some of them are a combination of fire towers, existing fire towers that we're not able to climb up anymore, and some are what you would see as a traditional 100-foot to a 400-foot tower.
Gotcha. And so on the new equipment that replaces these towers, so is that $8 million replaces the towers as well as the new equipment?
Correct. We would not be dependent on these towers. There would be a few of these towers, like in some rural areas, that we would keep up, repeaters, where there still may be LTE restraints with this new system that we'll still need, because it is compatible with VHF. Particularly in Chairman's district, Waycross, Ware County, Clinch County, we would still be reliable. We would still need to rely on VHF technology, which works off of these towers.
One last question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So if other agencies already have this out there, other state agencies have this band of frequency or whatever, is there not a way to tap on the towers and things that they have to utilize,
That's what this new system does. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, it works off of the current cell tower structure that's in around the state now.
Okay.
Moving on to the next item underneath tree seedling nursery. That is, it's an ask in there for $621,000 to recapitalize our nursery operation. And I would just say to the committee, this is a performance audit that we contracted with an individual that had 43 years of growing trees experience. That's a professional term. But he came in and did an audit of our nursery back in 2021 and provided us with an audit. And the ask that are associated with that $621,000 are associated with the findings of his audit. And that's essentially to move us to a containerized nursery so that we can adjust and be more compatible with what the marketplace is asking for. Landowners these days, especially when they're planting longleaf pines, are looking for a container. It's basically a tree that looks like a plug that you may associate that with a potting plant that you get at a Home Depot or Lowe's during the spring. That's what that would look like, and that plug comes out and it sticks in the ground, and it improves survivability. It expands the planting season for a landowner and for producers. So we're really excited about that. We're going to do that with our longleaf, and then we're also one of the things that gets lost in our agency is the amount of genetic and tree improvement work that we do. We are the leader in the Southeast in Georgia when it comes to tree genetics, when it comes to loblolly pine trees. We are on the 5th generation cycle of those trees, which is we are the shining star, the bright star when it comes to tree improvement. And the best of our genetics, we will also move into containerized production, which will allow us ultimately to increase the profitability of this nursery operation, so then it can fund itself and it can also recapitalize itself, and we can plan for that as we go forward, and it can also fund our ongoing tree improvement work that we do as a state, so we can continue to be a leader on that front. So we're real excited about that. We're pleased that the governor included that in his budget. That is also going to supplement a federal grant that we have received for 5 years, $160,000 each year for 5 years. So not only are we asking the state to bring money, we also have gone out and gotten federal grant money to partner with state funds to really bolster what that nursery operation looks like in Byronville, which is right outside of Warner Robins, Middle Georgia area. The other item under bond funds is additional funding asked for our Bacon-Pierce County construction project. That was priced out in 21, fiscal year 21, and construction has been delayed for a variety of reasons: supply chain, title issues, you name it. But what has happened as well, as many of you know, inflation has had an impact on that project, and that's what this ask does. That makes us whole on that project so we can move forward and finish that project. So, Mr. Chairman, I will park there and be happy to take any questions or offer any clarification should there be a need for it.
Okay, thank you, sir, and thank you for your remarks. On the tree seedling nursery, when we go to containerize, will we continue to offer bare root to those who wish to go bare root rather than containerize?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
And in terms of the nursery itself currently, is it self-sustaining?
No, sir.
But we anticipate with going to the better genetics and the containerized trees that we may be able to get there?
24 months.
All right, thank you, sir. And one other question, in terms of the Pierce-Bacon construction unit there, do we anticipate with this funding that we could go ahead and complete that in a timely manner? What kind of time frame are you looking at?
That project is underway. I visited that while I was down that way yesterday in anticipation for this hearing, and met with the foreman, and he's thinking mid to end April project would be complete.
All right. Any other questions from committee members? All right, Mr. Larimore, thank you very much. Thank you for what you do for our state and the men and women that show up to the fires. I know we didn't talk about the environmental cabs that is very much needed for those who fight fires on our some of our property. Last year we had a lightning strike, and all of a sudden we got a pretty good sized fire going, and had the opportunity to watch some of them that did not have a cab. But we do appreciate their dedication to our state and to the forestry industry and protecting us as they do. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission, Mr. Mitch Attaway. Thank you for being here, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity. I will be brief. I did not bring a presentation with me today. I don't have a whole lot to discuss. But
I was going to say yours is very short.
It is. But if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I would like to take the opportunity just a brief overview of what the agency's been up to since last time I was in front of the committee.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so as most of y'all know, we're broken down into 3 programs at the commission: agricultural, dams, our erosion and sediment control, and then our conservation department, which works closely with our soil and water conservation districts throughout the state. In our dam program, we continue to utilize the federal funds and state bond funding that we've received for rehabs and maintenance. We've been able to put 55 dams now on a routine maintenance schedule that we believe will eliminate them from the multi-million-dollar rehabs that I occasionally have to come up and ask for money for. Speaking of the rehabs, we did finish 3 in FY23, or about to complete 3 that started in FY23. Also, with that program or that department, we work closely with EPA and EPD for ag cost share programs, and recently we've put $300,000 out into ag producers' hands with that cost share program that amounted up to 26,000 feet of fence line ran to keep mostly cattle or other livestock out of streams and ponds across the state. And with that came 6,000 feet of pipeline for additional waters to keep that livestock out of our state waters. Erosion and sediment control program, we oversee the certification program that anybody involved in land disturbance across the state has to have certain programs. We're issuing over 11,000 certifications through there a year now, and also reviewing over 3,300 erosion and sediment control plans. That's a permit that anybody developing over 1 acre in the state has to have. We're happy to play a small part in the economic development across the state. And finally, third, our soil and water districts. We have 20 of those now that are involved in feral swine eradication. Well, I hope it's a ratification program with our Georgia Association of Conservation Districts. Since the inception of that program and the district involvement, they have eradicated over 17,000 hogs across the state of Georgia. Pretty impressed with their work in that program and proud of them. Our districts, along with us and GACD again this year, hosted a series of 12 workshops across the state to promote agriculture programs that our federal USDA partners offer, and ended that series with a 2-day event in Unicoi with an event we're able to put on with some of our RC&D partners up there. So, Mr. Chairman, I will move on to the budget now with that, if there's not any questions, or we can hold any to the end. As you mentioned, there's not a whole lot for me to talk about today, but we are found on, I believe it's page 14 of your tracking document, and 13.71 is a little over $31,000 for the one-time $1,000 salary supplement. Definitely appreciate that for our staff, and I would definitely appreciate it if we got that back, since, like Commissioner Harper said, that is already out the door. Secondly, 7.2 there is a little over, or a little under $31,000. That's to replace a vehicle that was totaled in an accident over the summer, and it was one of those deals. It's an older vehicle with the cost to repair and fix the vehicle. Insurance told us to scrap that one, so now we need a replacement vehicle to put back in our pool, and that concludes what I have for you today, committee members.
Well, thank you. And just because you mentioned it, and Commissioner Harper mentioned it as well, is there any collaboration between the two agencies in regards to the feral hog programs and task force? You have an eradication program, he has a task force. Are y'all working together on that?
Certainly, and I would like to point, we're also working with DNR, and the districts are, and there's, I believe it happened yesterday, Mr. Chairman, but one of our districts, Middle South District, Tifton, Ben Hill, that area, they just entered an agreement with DNR where they're going to be able to rent these traps out to producers or anyone else in that area to help that process. Really interested to see what I can report this time next year about the benefits of that pilot program as well.
Certainly look forward to that. For those of you who've never experienced planting peanuts and a feral hog rooting them up behind you as fast as you plant them, it kind of makes you wonder what we're out there doing. But thank you for those efforts to eradicate the feral hog, because it is a huge problem within the agriculture industry.
Yes,
and
sir.
For our growers. Any questions from members of the committee? All right, sir. Thank you. Appreciate
Yes,
you
sir.
being here
Thank you for
today,
your
and thank you
time.
for what you do. Commissioner Nunn, Department of Community Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And on the tracking sheet that we have for members of the committee, starts on page 3, section 16.
Perfect. Thank you. I wasn't sure what page we were on, but we're under
Well, some
section
have-
16.
Some have longer ones and some have shorter ones, so just wanted to make that clarification.
Exactly.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely, and thank you, members of the committee. And you were talking about collaboration.
If I may interrupt you for one moment, any of the items that are across the budget in all sections being pay raises, no need to really mention those because that's universal across other sections as well. So,
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. So just real quick, Commissioner Harper and Director Lauermore and I actually collaborate a lot around issues of heiress property, which is an impact on housing, on farms, on timber, and of course, and you'll hear from Commissioner Wilson next, we work extraordinarily closely together on the economic development front. I'll dive in really quickly. At DCA, we've got a fantastic team that's very hard at work addressing a myriad of issues through our various programs. I think one of the biggest topics that we've been focused on over the last number of years, but a heightened sense of awareness of recent is workforce housing. Whether that be the 35,000 plus homes that we have developed or preserved over the last 5 years through housing tax credits, which are a really important tool in the state. Whether that be the 850 some odd homes that we'll talk about, for sale homes that have been created as a function of the Governor's Rural Workforce Housing Initiative, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And I mentioned in the joint committee hearings, we just continue to see the demand, particularly at the lower end of the spectrum. You may know, and it shows up in the budget in rental housing. We administer a lot of federal funds that are addressed at rental assistance. And earlier this year, for about 14,000 vouchers that we administer, we opened up the wait list, and we had 175,000 applications in 3 days to be on a wait list. That's indication. On the economic development front, I know you'll hear from Pat. Obviously, we're super excited to be a part of the economic development ecosystem. Best state in the nation in which to do business for 10 years. I mean, the activity is unprecedented, the scale of the projects, which I think he'll talk about, and we're proud to work alongside the governor, Pat and his team, and all of our local partners. And I'll talk a little bit about how that impacts our budget momentarily. And then in terms of infrastructure, downtown development, many of the other things that we do as an agency, whether it be water, sewer, housing, rehab, the needs seem to be almost endless and extensive, in part due to aging infrastructure across our state, the growth that we are experiencing, and record high inflation. I'm proud that our Main Street program, there are 91 Main Street communities across the state. Last year, on the small business front, we helped to create more than 1,000 new businesses in those 91 communities, more than 4,100 jobs. I mentioned in the joint hearing last week, about 65 to 70% of our budget comes from federal funds, about 25% from state funds, and 5 to 10% from other. I'm going to focus on those state funds today. In your tracking sheet, in the amended, I will skip the statewide common budget change that you mentioned, but I will say thank you. We certainly appreciate the support. Under special housing initiatives, which is section 16.9, dot 2 is actually not a common add. This is a need that arises from the homelessness that we see across the state. The State Housing Trust Fund has received a fairly steady allocation in the state budget for as long as I can remember, as long as we can remember, many decades. That appropriation of about $3 million helps us to draw down about $31 million in federal funds, and it's simply used as matching funds. We were actually the second HUD entity, and I don't want to get into the wonky concept of continuums of care, but 2 years ago, the City of Atlanta Continuum of Care received an award for a youth homelessness demonstration project. And this last year, the state, so the 148 or 149 counties for which we are responsible, received an $11.5 million grant award from HUD to address homelessness in more rural parts of the state. What we are requesting in the budget is a total of 2.9, actually to be precise, $2,924,806 to serve as the match for that federal award to help us continue to utilize those funds. You will note that $2,124,806 is new money in the budget, and then there's actually $1.2 million that we're proposing to be redirected funds. $800,000 is actually a budget disregard in the Special Housing Initiatives budget last year, and the other two, the $400,000 is comprised of two $200,000 disregards under state community development programs. Again, that's $1.2 million of already budgeted money, $2.124 million of new money to get us the $2.9 million match. Did that make sense? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll keep going unless you stop me.
Does that match max out?
Does the match max out? It covers the I believe it's 11.7 million was the total award, but it helps us to draw down all of those funds. In the base budget, which we'll come back and talk about next time, we're actually also looking for additional funds to help us draw down some other anticipated programs that HUD will be running in the next year.
All right, I guess I should ask it a different way. Is that the maximum that we can draw down from the federal government?
In this program,
In this
yes.
program? Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. Moving on to really quickly 16.10.2, that's simply the $400,000 that I mentioned is moved in this budget to as a pay-for the special housing initiatives. So that's fairly straightforward. 16.11.2 under state economic development programs. So with 5 years of exceptional performance, including, as I'm sure Commissioner Wilson will talk about, the 5 largest projects in the state's history occurring over 2 fiscal years, this has put unprecedented demand on our competitive deal closing funds. Thanks to good leadership, thanks to legislative support, and to an attractive business climate, we're experiencing an unprecedented level of activity. I should note that only a few of the projects that are announced every year by our Department of Economic Development receive discretionary funding. So I think there have been, over the last 5 years, maybe 1,850 some odd projects that have been announced. Fewer than 75 of those have been awarded a discretionary grant, but those discretionary grants are reserved for projects that have outsized job creation, high wages, significant investment in our state. In fact, of the 74 grants, REBA grants that we have made over the last 5 years, those 74 grants have yielded more than $30.5 billion in private investment, 63,000 new jobs, and more than 10,000 retained jobs. I think that's a pretty significant impact. What we are asking for here in the budget is a $100,000 one-time add to the REBA program. The base budget includes $13 million a year. That's actually half of what the base budget was for REBA in 2018. But that, in order for us to address the current levels of activity for the current year, as well as the adequate reserves to operate this program, that means that we need to address that in the amended budget. You've been helpful in that in the past for some specific projects, and this year we're requesting a $100 million add to support the REBA program.
Okay, Commissioner, you made comment of 74 REBA grants that have been awarded since this fund, or since it started, with an economic impact of what, $30.5 billion. Do we have a total of what those 74 grants, the total amount for those 74 grants?
We do, and I'll get those numbers for you, but to give you a pretty good idea, it's around 450 to 460 million. And I think that, and again, you go back to the amount that has been created in terms of private investment, and remember that those include the 5 big projects, you know, that you have supported in last year's budget and the year before. One thing that I might note here, if you look at many of our grant programs, you can think about it like a checking account, right? So there's money that goes into the checking account. You write a check, that money goes out. I think it's important to think about these programs, REBA, and I'm going to speak about EDGE momentarily, like your business working capital account, right? Those funds we operate from a sound fiscal conservative budgeting principle standpoint. Pat Wilson and the governor do not offer funds that we don't have the money to cover. That offer, may take some period of time to get accepted, and not all, although we've got a pretty good batting average, not all those offers get accepted. Once an offer gets accepted, then we get involved at the Department of Community Affairs negotiating a performance contract with the company and the local development authority. It's a 3-way performance contract with the state, and whatever that performance period is, typically 3 to 5 years, we monitor how you're doing against your objective, what you committed to. If you don't meet those performance requirements, you may not be able to draw the funds, or if you've drawn the funds and you still don't meet them, we may have a conversation about taking those back. So I think about that more as a working capital account as opposed to a checking account. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions on that, or you want me to keep going? Okay, so under the next item, under 1612.1, I expect you may be hearing from Director Hunter Hill at some point from GFA. I will just highlight that this $250 million add or request to provide funds for wastewater and water infrastructure across the state is in a dire need. I mentioned earlier that, be it from the extensive growth across the state, the aging infrastructure that we see across the state, and the exorbitant inflation that we're experiencing, this is a significant need, and I'm sure that Director Hill will be happy to speak to that. Any questions on the GFA front? So moving on.
I have
to
one question. I'm sorry,
Yes,
Commissioner. There was some confusion. Will that be low interest loans to the communities? Is that correct?
That is
do we
correct.
have an idea of what that low interest rate might be?
So I would defer that to Commissioner Hill, and he may text me here momentarily. He did the other day with some information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Those are certainly advantageous and favorable rates.
Sure.
that they are able to offer, and they work really closely with us. In some places, we'll talk about One Georgia here momentarily, we may come in with a small grant from One Georgia to help, and then they may actually take out debt for the remainder of a project at a low rate. So,
Right. And do we know what the current balance is and or when we last had an infusion of cash into this account?
So it's been a little while since we had an infusion of cash into the Georgia One Fund,
Right.
but I can't give you the date.
Okay.
I'm sure he'll be happy to do that.
Sure. Thank you.
And I can follow up with him, and we can get you some information
Okay. Thank you,
after
sir.
this. Then the last two items, both under 1613, under the One Georgia Authority. First, 16.13.1, we're requesting $100 million for the EDGE and a new site development program. Let me back up and remind you, One Georgia is an economic development tool designed to help make rural parts of the state competitive. And this has been a fantastic program that has been around for the last 25 years. Currently, we have 3 active programs in One Georgia, an equity small capacity development program, the EDGE program, which is a competitive deal closing program that works alongside REBA, but is very focused on the rural parts of the state. And then we'll talk a little bit about the workforce housing program. Here, just as I said with Reba, we've experienced unprecedented demand. I think, and let me give you some numbers to work with. I shared some of these the other day in the joint committee. So projects that have been awarded over the last 5 years total 39 projects in 28 counties. That's about 31 million. I mentioned the time lag between an offer being accepted by a company, between us negotiating that performance contract. There are another 17 projects that are in process in that program. So EDGE is a really important tool for all of the rural parts of our state, and we're requesting, again, funding for the $100 million in funding, both to help us to address the current pipeline of activity, to help us replenish the reserves that have been completely exhausted with the last couple of years of unprecedented investment, and then also to start a targeted site development program. This is something that Commissioner Wilson and I have talked a lot about, with concern that the number of shovel-ready sites across the state that have infrastructure that are ready to go, which is an asset that site selectors are looking for today. That there's really a dearth of those, and that's an intent of ours here. That's the first item under 1 Georgia. The second item under 1 Georgia, 1613.2, is aimed at recapitalizing the workforce housing initiative with $50 million in one-time funds. You'll notice the 23-921-179 which is a request for additional funding in the amended budget. If you couple that with existing funds totaling $26,078,821, that gets you the $50 million. So that we are clear on where that $26 million and change comes from. Several years ago, I believe it was 3 years ago, we launched a rural innovation program within 1 Georgia. Some of you may remember that. In the first year, we put about $25 million out of $39 million that was appropriated. We last year used the residual $14 million, with your permission, to serve as seed capital for a rural workforce housing fund. We aim to discontinue the rural innovation program and use the remaining $26 million of funding for rural innovation to continue the workforce housing program, which, as I alluded to in my opening remarks, just in the first 6 months, we have made 9 grants for infrastructure in really every corner of the state, from Seminole County to Stevens County and lots of places in between. Those grants will yield at least 850 new for-sale homes in a price range that is targeted to our rural workforce, in addition to a fairly significant amount of additional development capacity, once those homes are purchased. So let me stop there and answer questions about 1 Georgia, either the EDGE or the workforce housing, or anything else for that matter. That concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you, sir. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for that presentation. Can you tell me a little bit more about the EDGE program and what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think across the state, there are, and maybe I can give you a couple of examples. I'm proud of how all of these tools kind of work together. But down in Bacon County, Rao's Pasta Sauce, which help me, Pat. San Rogano actually looked to build their first North American plant outside of Italy in our state. This is a great ag story. It's a great story for that community. There was actually a company that had left that community, and our team, working very closely with the local economic developer, was able to attract that company here. Those were a significant number of jobs for that part of the state, and so we were able to put some discretionary funds on top of the job tax credits, the site, everything else that is really the attractor. I think it's important to note that the majority of these awards, or really the median, is less than $1 million. We're not talking about buying projects. We're talking about providing a little bit of added incentive that goes into things like water and sewer infrastructure, site development, land. If you look in the more developed parts of the state, sometimes that will go into machinery and equipment that the state or the local development authority rather would own. But in less developed parts of the state, frequently it's going into land and site development. I could give you examples like that all across the state. Again, if you and I'll share with you a map. You can see the 39 awards that I talked about earlier. Sorry, I don't have a pretty picture that Director Lowermore did. But there's really activity all across the state, and we could sit down and talk about another couple of dozen projects like that just off the top of my head. Does that answer your question?
That does. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. In terms of the rural site development program that we will start up, can you talk through, and maybe Commissioner Wilson can add to this, how those, will those be sites that there is interest, that has individuals, companies that have contacted either you or economic development to say, hey, we're interested and that's where we go, or do we go do site development? Which way do we sell it?
So, interesting question, and I know he's going to speak to it in more robust detail. He and I have had a lot of discussion about this because if you look at all of our neighboring states, and probably, I don't want us to think that we're playing catch up. We're the #1 state in the nation in which to do business for a reason. People look to us and they say, hey, we want to be like Georgia, but there has been a lot of investment in literally every neighboring state, except I cannot speak to Florida's budget. I'll have to go back and dig in at a significant level to develop sites. Right. Some of those are on a large scale, with like statewide mega sites. Some of those are, at a local scale. Commissioner Wilson and I have talked about the need for us to be able to partner with locals, with local development authorities and with local communities that seek to put skin in the game, that seek to prepare themselves to embrace that next opportunity. And so we are actively working on the seeds of this program, pending approval of the funding for that. Again, I know he will be happy to explain a little bit more detail about what some of his partner agencies are doing in other states. But I think it's got to be a two-way street. We've got to be able to look at it and say, what are the assets that communities bring to the table, including the local commitment and the skin in the game, and then how do we go in and help those communities and pull up alongside them and enable them to prepare themselves.
All righty, any other questions from members of the committee? Commissioner, thank you. Thanks for all you're doing for our state and for rural Georgia. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
All right, Commissioner Pat Wilson. Which will begin on page 6 of the tracking sheets for members of the committee that you have.
Chairman, thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Let me start by saying how great it is to follow the forestry and ag and DCA, because it is a team sport, and economic development starts with the partnerships that we have, and it really is what sets us apart and makes us different. I want to say thanks to the committee. Decade of excellence, 10 years of being #1. We can't do it without the General Assembly, and y'all have been right there with us for as long as I can remember. Let me start a little bit by just commenting on what Commissioner Nunn was saying. The site improvement program, and I think we've been talking to the governor about this for a long time, and one of the things he's continued to hear as he travels the state is, Governor, but for X, we can't land this project. And you think about sites that we have, and we've lost a number of them, and I could probably give you a list of 10 or so that if we just had just a little bit over to put something over the finish line on a site, we probably could have won a project. And so we've been a victim of our own success. We have located projects in every corner of the state, and a lot of the best sites are gone. And so what this would do is allow us, as Christopher said, to partner with the communities and go in this together and help them get over the finish line. And so I think it's something that's needed and something that I feel pretty passionately about, and I know the governor's heard a lot about it. So committee, I'm going to start, and I'm just going to go through the ads in our budget because I feel like the governor was good to us this year when he gave us the charge to potentially add 3% in our budget. We turned around. We have 7 divisions plus administration. We went to the team and said, all right, what would make a difference for you in a potential 3% add? The number one piece, and this is 23.1 in our departmental administration, was a rent increase. And so for the department moved to Midtown in 2005, and we were the anchor tenant in the Synergy building. In fact, we brought all of our partners with us, Georgia Power, the EMCs, ECG, Quick Start, Georgia Quick Start, everybody's in the same building. Because of that, we were able to negotiate a very competitive, if not generous rate in Midtown, but it had a 2% escalation. And so over the years, we've never actually asked for that 2%. And what we've done is, based on how much space each division takes up, we ask them to pay rent into administration, which goes then to the rent pot. And so what this would do, this $300,000 ad from the governor, would actually free up money in every division and allow them to better meet their goals. And so part of that, $70,000, is a disregard from last year's budget, and then the governor added $230,000 to hit the $300,000 number. The second ad is 23.1.3, is $225,000 to revamp our fleet. And so we have 8 vehicles in our fleet. We replaced 3 last year. These are 2017 or 2018 Kia Sorrentos, made in Georgia. We only purchase made in Georgia vehicles. We would like to replace those with new Tellurides. And the reason being, and made in Georgia Tellurides. The reason being is, unlike a lot of folks like Commissioner Harper, whose folks need to just get around the state, we're hosting delegations many times, companies that are flying in from overseas, companies that are visiting. We're going on industrial site tours. We need spacious vehicles. We need vehicles that people can get in and out of, and the Telluride is that. And we need a vehicle that, honestly, that shows Georgia off. And that's part of what makes Georgia a special place to do business, is that we show off Georgia products. And so that $225,000 would be for us to finish revamping our fleet. 23.3.2, this is the Georgia Council for the Arts. This is a $30,000 ad to take an inventory of the state art collections. We have a very large art collection in the state that is under the Georgia Council for the Arts, and by large I'm saying thousands of pieces. When the Georgia Council for the Arts moved to the Department of Economic Development in 2011, I had no idea that we had this massive collection. Some of that artwork came to our department and is displayed in the halls, but a majority of it was boxed up and is in the state archives. And honestly, we don't know what all we have. In fact, there's some pieces that are here in the Capitol. And so that $30,000, we'd love a longer conversation with the committee about what to do with this art collection in the long run. It's a waste for it to be sitting in the state archives building. But at the same time, we need to understand what we have so that we can have that conversation. And so that's what that $30,000 ad is. Under Innovation and Technology, 23.6.2, the governor added $1 million to provide funds to support deployment of hydrogen energy applications. And so this is something that we have been talking with Georgia companies about. And so you have electrification. that is going on with lithium-ion batteries. Of course, our major manufacturers are moving in that direction. But if you talk to companies that are in long haul and logistics, hydrogen is likely the long-term solution for long haul and logistics. And so this money would be used for us to pull together a focus group under the governor's EMEA task force, in which we pull together the private sector to help us make decisions about how we can support where they want to be with logistics. I guess the best way to think about this is if you have a gasoline vehicle, that's likely moving to electric. If you have diesel, that's likely moving to hydrogen fuel cell. And so, in fact, we just took a very large delegation to Korea to go see what Hyundai is doing there. They actually build Exient fuel cell trucks, which are big rigs, and they transport their goods in Korea already via hydrogen. And so we have companies like UPS and Coca-Cola, the Georgia ports, and Hyundai that are all looking at where hydrogen goes in the future, including Racetrack, headquartered right here in Georgia. And so that's what that funding will be, to convene a group to help us facilitate that discussion and come up with what we need to be doing to support Georgia companies as they make this transition. And that includes, of course, what GDOT and CERTA are already doing as far as infrastructure goes around hydrogen. And then international relations and trade, increase funds for our Georgia manufacturing and agricultural products. So the International Trade Division of the department is truly a focus on helping companies find new customers overseas. We do that by having international offices, and then we have a team based here in Georgia that helps companies find new markets, find new customers, does market analysis for them. It's an amazing service that mainly helps small business and many times agriculture. And in fact, if you look at where our trade team focuses in ag, it's your 4 Ps, peanuts, poultry, pecans, and pine. A lot of times is where our international trade team is focused. Last year, we lost $200,000 in the budget under international trade. This would put that $200,000 back into our budget and help our trade team continue to compete internationally and help Georgia companies. Honestly, it was the loss of that $200,000 only impacted Georgia companies that we couldn't serve. And then finally, pass-throughs in our budget under tourism. We had 2 ads in our budget, and I know Frank Poe and Marshall Guest from the Metro Chamber can speak to these a little better, but $1.5 million that is focused on moving the Olympic Cauldron from right down here, right down the street into the Centennial Park area where it would actually be seen, I think, a little bit more. I believe this is planning funding for that move. And then the second piece of this is $29.25 million that was added to support two massive events, the FIFA World Cup and the 2025 College Football Playoff National Championship game. These are one-time ads that support infrastructure, security, and safety. And so I'm sure that the team at the Metro Chamber can add a little bit more to that if needed. But Chairman, those are all the ads that were in my budget. Happy to take questions on that or anything that came up from Commissioner Nunn before.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Wilson. We appreciate that. Chairman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's go back to the special project for the Georgia Council for the Arts.
Yes, sir.
I serve on the State Museum there, and as chairman of State Properties, we've been looking at a way to house all of and we have a Coca-Cola venue down there that's
right.
empty, and we would like to have a conversation with y'all about how we might go about combining all of these that we have and put it in one central area and just take it out and create a new facility in that respect. The other thing is the moving of the Olympics thing there. What are there private monies that's going to be utilized to offset some of the costs?
Chairman, I'm not exactly sure. Marshall, would you have some info on that? On the cauldron? Chairman, we'll get
Okay.
you information
All right,
on that.
good.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And Chairman, I love the idea, if there's anything that we can do to coordinate with you on that. I mean, it's a shame that all those works of art from Georgia artists are sitting in the state archives.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll be contacting you on that.
Thank you.
Chairman Bonner.
Thank you. Hey, mine's a follow-up on the cauldron. Does the state own that?
That I do not know. Marshall, do you know? All right. We'll get you more information on that too, Chairman.
Because, I mean, it does beg the question why would the state pay to move it if we don't own it?
Right. And I'm sure all of that went into discussion when the governor's team met with Frank Poe in World Congress Center. But okay. Chairman Tarvin, absolutely. We'll make sure that we get a full briefing on that, Chairman.
Thank you.
A couple of questions, Commissioner. On the increased rental at the Synergy building, understand there are 2% escalation clause was, kind of in that contract, but given the amount of space available in Atlanta, have we tried to renegotiate that?
So, Chairman, it is a very below market rate. In fact, Georgia Tech is building a new building next door and came to us and offered to move next door, and they were double what we are right now. I'm sure, John, do you have any specifics? I don't think we're not anywhere close to market rate. Yeah.
Okay, but that would be more or less universal on available office space in the area?
Right.
Okay, it just seemed as though, in having some conversations, that given the vacancies in the area, that we could negotiate something that may be a little bit better than that, but that may be the best we can do. On the replacement of the vehicles, what kind of mileage is on the ones that we're currently using? I understand you're looking for something bigger.
Right. So the mileage is roughly 50 to 70,000. So it's nothing like Commissioner Harper is experiencing. But the good thing is those vehicles will go back into DOAS and go back into the state fleet. It's not like we're taking a loss on them.
Right.
They're all in good shape. We maintain them very well.
Okay.
It's a matter of needing bigger vehicles.
All right, and on 2372, can you talk a little bit more about the global export of Georgia manufactured markets and agricultural goods? When you say increased funds for contracts, can you define contracts for us?
Sure. Our contracts are our international offices. So the state has 12 international offices around the world, and what they do is help companies sell into those markets.
Right.
And so we have strategically followed two things. Number one are our largest trade markets, and number two are where we have FTAs, free trade agreements, as the United States. Every time the U.S. has a new free trade agreement, we've kind of opened an office there. What we had to do last year because of the cut was to just lessen the amount of services we can offer to companies, and many times, what those contracts are doing. Let's say you're selling goods into Mexico, you're selling goods into China. Your company has problems with the government. Our contract offices are assisting them and helping them get things out of customs. They're helping them navigate the laws, and of course, I mean, y'all know this, geopolitically right now, it's probably tougher to sell into certain markets than it's ever been. And so we're not dealing with the Coca-Colas and the Home
Right.
Depots. We're dealing with people who actually need the help.
Sure. And within the ag products world, is Department of Ag involved in that as a partner, or?
We work with Tyler and his team on a pretty regular basis. And in fact, at one point, SUSTA was located at our department, but we still utilize that teamwork approach when it comes to ag. Absolutely.
All righty. Any other questions from members of the committee? All right, Commissioner, thank you.
Thank you all
Appreciate
very
you
much.
being here today. Thanks for all you're doing for Georgia. Is Jason Shaw anywhere around? Mr. Chairman, Georgia Public Service Commission, welcome.
2 minutes. That means I need to talk real fast.
Thank you for being here today, Mr.
You
Chairman.
serious? 2? I was going to have to start picking. Well, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. Chairmans and members, as always, I thank you for allowing us input into the budget process. We're grateful to the governor for his proposed budget that includes funding for some much-needed equipment and upgrades. These extra resources will help us stay competitive in the job market and accessible to Georgians. As this budget cycle began, the PSC was asked to consider strategic enhancements in areas of need that can move the needle on customer service. The requests we make today will directly affect Georgians who utilize our services, from our gas pipeline operators to any Georgia citizen who has an issue with a utility bill or the services of a utility provider. So the PSC is in need of 3 database upgrades, and the governor's budget included the one we asked for the Call Before You Dig program. The others are our Consumer Response System database. That's a one-time request, $250,000. We went out to the market on that, and the bids came in around that $249,000 and some change. That database will help us to resolve billing and service issues when someone contacts the PSC, as happened 16,868 times in 2023. A file is created in a database for each call or email, and any response from a utility must be emailed to the PSC and manually entered into that database. So a modern database would allow our representatives and the utilities representatives access to one shared database. This would create an instant accounting of a case's progress from the minute a complaint is read by a utility representative through the resolution of that case. Georgia consumers would be notified by email each time a representative from the commission or the utility company updates the case file. Second database we're requesting is our pipeline safety database, another one-time $250,000 upgrade. The PSC works under a federal grant for reimbursement of costs to inspect natural gas pipelines. Increased federal requirements for inspections are putting Georgians' reimbursement rate at a risk. The current pipeline safety database, which is approximately 25 to 30 years old, it makes it difficult for us to comply with federal reporting guidelines. This can put Georgia's federal reimbursement rate at risk. A new database would streamline our operation and help to protect our federal reimbursement rate. We also are seeking a telephone system upgrade at a one-time cost of $100,000. The Georgia Public Service Commission is long overdue for a modern phone system. The antiquated phones, last upgraded 20 years ago, do not allow for voice over internet protocol, which is the industry standard. New phones would provide employees more efficient remote use, call logs, and caller ID for security purposes. The current phones significantly hamper efficiency and adversely affect consumer service for Georgians. Other housekeeping requests, we're requesting a COLA shortfall for the FY 2024 budget cycle at a cost of $104,820 annualized. The FY 23 budget included a $5,000 COLA, and the fiscal year 2024 budget included a $2,000 COLA. Although the federal government partially reimburses us for the pipeline safety program, all PSC staffers are state employees and eligible for the COLAs. The PSC requests $41,094 to cover the COLA shortfall in this FY 24 budget. Likewise, the PSC seeks guidance on the COLA shortfall for the FY 23. The General Assembly appropriated $80,538 in the PSC's FY24 budget to cover this shortfall, but the governor issued a disregard for $63,726 of those funds. We're also requesting a $25,000 annualized for an audit of our Universal Access Fund contributors. We've actually already conducted that audit for this year, and I'm happy to say that as a result of that audit, we were able to discover that one of our major contributors, if not our biggest contributor to the fund, had changed their methodology and the way they report to us in dealing with their affiliates. We were able to go out and recover, it was over $3 million that they owed the fund. That just happened recently. So we're asking for help to cover the cost of that audit. The code requires all these telecommunications companies holding a certificate of authority issued by us to contribute to the fund. And that supplements funding for independent telephone companies across the state. An annual audit will ensure revenues in the fund are accurate and contribution factors are applied correctly. We have to have a little help with this, y'all. We've got over 400 contributors to the fund. We're also requesting $15,262 prorated for the fourth quarter for ensuring business continuity. At the commission, we have 4 units under its Utilities Regulation Division, and each unit has a director. We feel that we need, in order to ensure this continuity and to cross-train future leadership, we're requesting funds to promote 4 employees into a deputy director position at an annual cost of $61,046. We're requesting $15,262 to cover the cost of the promotions for the remainder of the FY 2024. Also, we're requesting we had $16,650 annualized for the per diem increase. Georgia Code allows per diem reimbursement for commissioners that are required to live more than 50 miles from the Capitol. So in FY 2021, General Assembly increased the per diem rate, and the PSC requests a $16,650 increase in the budget to fund this legislative action. The Public Service Commission's request beyond the governor's recommendation, total request here today is $761,732 for amended fiscal year 2024. I appreciate the time and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being here today and for what you do for Georgia. Do we have any questions from members of the committee? Just a couple of things, Mr. Chairman. Just in looking through the budget, 40.1.2 had to deal with security there at the office. Are you in a place there that you feel comfortable with the security that's being offered at this point?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's a great question. I do feel comfortable. We're very, very thankful for the help we've had. We just had a contested case last week where we're dealing with the generation challenges from all the growth in the state. I'll just tell you this, it really helps when you got a man in blue from our fine law enforcement community that's there on site when we're having these. It's quite a deterrent. We have had some unusual circumstances over the last few years. Energy policy is very contested. It's very politicized. There's differences of opinions, and sometimes folks feel like coming down there and just expressing their feelings in a way that can be disrupting and somewhat concerning. So we appreciate that help, but I do feel very good. The State Patrol and Capitol Police have been very good to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tarvin.
Yeah, yes, quickly, where is that $3 million you said you'd like to have?
That's in the UAF, the Universal Access Fund.
Okay, and tell me the reason what did you say about the reporting, the way
Well,
what did you say about that?
So the audit helped us to figure out that there was a difference of opinions, if you will, on the way that the methodology is calculated with regards to some of the telecommunications companies that have affiliates. And we actually figured out it was about twice that. But when we went back and looked at it, we were able to discover a particular date where communications took place between our staff and that utility and that telecommunications company, and we determined that at that point in time is where they should have started remitting. And so it took a while to conduct, not for once the audit, but also to just get all the data requests answered, and we were able to come to a resolution on
But
that.
that was one vendor or one?
Yes, it
And
was.
what period of time do you think that went on? Or?
That would have been started somewhere in late 2022, I believe, until we, I think around August of 2023 is when we discovered that there was a particular date where we felt like their answers, questions should have been answered with regards to the certainty of how that methodology should have been reported.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman Green.
Thank you. Is the amount of electricity some of the companies located in Georgia are using, is that a concern to the Public Service Commission?
Yeah, it's actually, that's a great question, because what we're dealing with right now is it's generational. It's not something we've ever seen before. I mean, I haven't been there forever, but everybody's saying if you look at a graph of what the load forecast for the Georgia power system that we regulate, it's a modest growth, a couple hundred megawatts a year, I think.
Yeah.
And what we've seen in 2022 as a result of the growth, it did this. And we are in a position, because of Units 3 and soon to be Unit 4 at Plant Vogtle, that we've got more capacity, particular carbon-free capacity, than other states do, being the first to build a nuclear plant in 30-plus years in this country. So it's helped spur a lot of the growth, we feel, or we know. But now, we had the first round of these hearings last week, and what came out of that is that out of this extraordinary growth that we're seeing in the load forecast, just in the short term, since the last IRP update, which was conducted in 2022, we've seen it since about the middle of 2022. We voted on that case in July of 2022. Since then is when you've really seen this jump. And about almost 80% of that load growth can be attributed to the artificial intelligence community, the data centers, if you will. It's a major form of growth that Georgia's one of the top 3 states that these folks are looking at. And we feel like they're mainly looking at Georgia too, and because we do have the capacity and we've got competitive rate structure, but they're coming here, and we're trying our best to figure out how to make sure we can, number one, serve these new customers in this new load, but number 2, and mainly, make sure that if we can serve them, that we do it without putting upward pressure on the other ratepayers. But it's an extraordinary challenge, but it's also an opportunity for the continued growth of the state.
Good. Thank you.
To follow up on that, Mr. Chairman, with the data centers that do consume significant power, at the rate of growth at which we are going, and with Unit 4 coming on, when will we be in a situation to where that excess power, we've got to move forward from there to continue to build to keep that excess power, so to speak? Is it a situation where as soon as they come online, it's
there's a timeline that's built into the pipeline, if you will, of the pipeline of these projects that are already announced that they're coming to Georgia or wanting to come to Georgia. And if you take the initial load forecast from all these projects, which I said the majority of them being data centers, the state's got enough history with data centers now to have a pretty good indication on, how much load and how these customers are handled, because they are handled differently, because most of these data centers, particularly on the cloud side and the AI side, they're 24/7. They're not interruptible customers. But the amount of load we're seeing is substantial, and it's happening pretty quickly. To answer your question, we did not have a capacity need for the last several years projected to be around 2028. Now we're looking at 2025. So it's happening fast.
Very quickly.
So that sort of limits the type of generation you can go out and build. you can't, we know you can't build a nuclear plant
Right, exactly.
in a year and a half.
I guess that's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Is, you've
So
got to
we-
move more quickly than we anticipated.
Yeah, you've got to be realistic in your options there.
Right,
And we are the number 7 state for solar in the country right now, projected to be 4th or 5th possibly. We just had the largest utility scale solar RFP that was released this quarter. It included roughly 1,000 megawatts that was left over from a prior RFP that was not procured because these projects are harder to finance, just like other things are. But it's over 3,000 megawatts that's rolling out now. So we're growing our solar portfolio in a substantial way, and to the point where it's causing some growing pains, some concerns with the ag and forest industry. And so you guys are looking at land use legislation and things like that. We've got to be smart about that too. So we're pretty limited in terms of, and I'm not just talking about Georgia Power. Obviously, we regulate Georgia Power, so we've got this case going on, and we'll decide that on that case in April. But the Oglethorpe and the EMC networks, as well as the municipal providers, are experiencing the same thing. They just don't have to come to us. They can go out and procure generation as it becomes available and so forth.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for what you and the members of the commission are doing for Georgia as we move forward. All righty, with that, anything from members of the committee? Mr. Chairman, thank you for being here today.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
This will conclude the Appropriations Subcommittee on Economic Development. Certainly appreciate everyone being here today and the members of the committee. And with that, we are adjourned.